Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review here for the remake in the middle of my Texas Chainsaw Massacre reviews. The remake of the series, well, the first film ever, from 2003. Yes, I have the collection box set, 2-disc edition, whatever, that came out back in the day. When you open this up, you actually get a full-length blade of a chainsaw. It's kind of cool. I think there's like skin and hair and gore and stuff hanging from it too. You have crime scene photos, a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes documentaries. All that stuff was really good when I watched it way back in the day. Anyway, I haven't seen these movies in a long time, but this is the first one I ever saw. In case you didn't see my previous reviews, this was the movie that introduced me to the series. My mom saw it in theaters with her cousin. She loved it so much. She came home probably 2 years ago, or two years later, excuse me, about 2005. I finally watched it on TV. She wanted to watch it with me. And I think at that time I would have been about 11. And so we watched it, and I absolutely loved it then. And I have one subscriber who talked about this being their absolute favorite of the series, and I get it why. I went into these reviews thinking this would be my favorite still, and I gotta be honest with you, it kind of fell from grace for me a little bit. I hadn't seen it in a long time. Like, I haven't watched this in like 8 years, maybe 7 years. It's been a long time, dude. I've done a lot of growing up since then. A lot of my tastes have changed over the years with movies, entertainment in general, books, all of that stuff. And I gotta tell you, the remake is not a bad movie. It really isn't. It's just kind of... It feels very 2003. It feels very... It's not what I wanted it to be. It's certainly better than Texas Chainsaw 3D. It's certainly better than The Beginning, which I saw in theaters. It's the first ever series of the first ever movie in the series I saw in theaters. It's better than those. It's better than Leatherface. It's better than a lot of these. For sure, the 2022 film doesn't hold a candle to this. 20 years later, as a matter of fact. This movie is a little bit, just a little bit, of something that I don't think aged that well. It feels very early 2000s, even though it takes place in the 70s. It's just, I don't know. I think I figured out what it is. Now, mind you, I'm a big fan of the director. Marcus Nispel, I think is his name. He directed the Friday the 13th remake also about, 5 years later? 6, somewhere in there. 2009. Anyway, I think that this film is a more competently made film, but I enjoy Friday the 13th more, and I'm like the only person who likes that movie, even though it's messy too. It's got a lot of problems with that shit. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003 has a lot of good about it. A lot of good. It has a lot of good tension in there too. But a lot of it can be undercut by certain things, like the soundtrack or certain sound effects or anything. But I think overall, they really get a lot of things really perfectly, I think. Let's kind of start off with the story here. We have a group of teens that are driving in the car, listening to Sweet Home Alabama. Why the fuck wouldn't they? This is the film, to me, that started that trend of having that. A lot of people say Devil's Rejects did. I think that came out after this movie. But this is the one where I remember hearing that and seeing every redneck I knew here in the South decide to go crazy over this fucking song that I hated. Even Kid Rock made his stupid remake version of that song that's like all summer long. I don't know. I hate both versions of the song is what I'm saying. So having to hear that now, I forgot about this movie opening up to that, so it annoys me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Anyway, they're traveling in a van, and very much like the original film, they pick up a hitchhiker. This one happens to be a girl, though. It's not Chop Top, which there is no Chop Top in this film. There is no Grandpa in this film, thank God, because both of those elements, I like to a degree the hitchhiker. The Grandpa I've never liked at all in any of the movies, any of the sequels, any of it. Even part 4 doesn't pay that off on what happens with the Grandpa in that movie. Anyway, so here we are with this flick here. I wanted to like it more this time around because of my nostalgic feelings about it, but I have a lot of failings about it. The hitchhiker girl, anyway, in their truck, their van, panics because she seems to be realizing they're driving towards the place that she tried to escape from, and from her crotch area she pulls out a revolver and she blows her brains out in the back seat in front of everybody. I cannot imagine having to witness something like that. And frankly, it's super effective in this movie. This movie has a lot of body parts, it has a lot of blood, it has that kind of stuff, but a lot of the kills with the chainsaw or with anything are typically off screen. This one is not. This one feels real. Even down to when they cut back to the dead body, there is smoke coming out of her mouth. That is probably one of the most horrific suicide scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Ever. That is truly horrific, and it gets me every time I watch it. So, this is a brutal flick. It has quite a bit of blood in it. I think Friday the 13th gets it better when Marcus directed that. But it's good. For Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's the best damn blood we've had since Part 2. Even though Part 2 is a terrible film and I hate it deeply. To me, this is better than Part 2, 3, and 4. Easily. And I used to think going into the series reviews for this channel that I would like this film more than the original, because I do have flaws in the original, like the ending that I think is kind of unsatisfying. But then I watched this one, and some of it's complete nonsense. Like, it's kind of a mess, you know? Anyway, the kids that are traveling in the van are trying to go to report, hey, we have a dead body in our van. They want to talk to the sheriff, who happens to be the guy from Full Metal Jacket, the drill sergeant. And he is phenomenal here. Gives the best performance. He's super great. Love the guy. Eventually, they work their way over to the Leatherface house, which, to me, in this film, looks really iconic. But they get inside, and it's super hard to see. It's like the whole film is filled in sepia tone. I think this is the first one I ever saw do that in Hollywood. Then it became a trend. Devil's Rejects did that. A lot of movies did that after this particular movie. A lot of horror films did that. Even kind of Friday the 13th a little bit. A lot of the sepia-toned movie and filming, it's supposed to make things look dirtier than they are. But then, like, when you get to the basement of this house, there's just water everywhere. It's just disgustingly gross and moldy, and it's really nasty. The film is supposed to make you feel gross like the original film did, but the original movie from 1974 feels more authentic to me when it comes to that. 30 years later, having this remake, it's not bad. It's just like, whatever, you know? I'm trying to think of what else I could talk about that's not too spoiler-filled. They encounter Leatherface, he brutalizes them. More than you've ever seen Leatherface do that, which I think was the big selling point for this film, even though it's kind of a generic movie. Like I said, it's really not the best slasher ever. It's really not the best slasher remake ever. It kind of hasn't aged the best either, like I said. But the cast here, I think, give a really good performance. As I talked about the man who plays the drill sergeant, I cannot remember his name to save my life. I keep wanting to call him Armie Hammer, but that is not his name, thank God. I keep wanting to call him that. He's a great actor, though. I love that guy. You have Jessica Biel from Seventh Heaven, of all things, playing the main chick, the Sally, final girl in this movie. I don't know if her name is Sally in the film, but I really don't give a shit. It's Jessica Biel, dressing like a redneck, very truly Southern woman. She's a beautiful girl, really great here. Really enjoyed her performance, too, in the movie. You have some of the other kids in the car, too, that hang out. I think all of them give a really solid performance. And also the guy with the glasses. There's one particular scene with him and the sheriff that I think is fantastic. It's super tense, super, just gets under your skin, you know? It's great. I love all of that. And then you have Leatherface, the person you came to watch this movie for. It is certainly an improvement over Part 2, 3, and 4's Leatherface, for sure, especially Part 4, Next Generation. This Leatherface, I remember looking a lot better. I remember liking the look a lot better. And watching it now, I just don't like the look of him in this movie. I don't know about the prequel to this film that comes out as the next review. The Beginning is what it's called. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning. I remember liking this Leatherface more than that one, but frankly, I might end up liking that one more than this one. I haven't seen that film in even longer, like 10 years. So, I don't know. It might be a whole different story when I talk about that movie, but this one, I remember loving the look of Leatherface, and watching it this time around, I'm like, I don't. It looks like he's wearing like a puffy jacket underneath, like the jacket you used to see every kid in your school wear when you were still a kid back in the 90s and early 2000s. It just, I don't know, there's something about the look of him, and I realize you don't really get a really great look at him a lot of the time in this film. So, you know, it's kind of up in the air on what you think. It might be a better look for you on what your tastes are, but I just think the original Leatherface is the scariest, looks the best. I don't know. That's just me, though. This movie, it's not really even scary. There's a lot of, like, jump scares in this film, and I noticed that, too, watching it this time around. A lot of cheap jump scares, too, which was kind of, from what my memory serves me, I remember that being kind of the beginning of this happening in Hollywood horror films. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong. Maybe there was more as a precursor to it. But I remember this being one of the first ones that kept happening. And I really remember it happening too when I watched the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street in theaters in 2010. It was bad. A lot of bad jump scares constantly. It's annoying. It's really annoying. This film does not feel cheap. It looks fantastic. The budget is beautiful. Marcus Nispel's directing is amazing, I would say. There's one particular shot involving the girl who killed herself in the van that is horrific. Truly horrific. It just is. It's shocking, as a matter of fact. I think it feels real a lot of the time, and that's what makes it so effective a lot of the time. The atmosphere in here, again, that tension building is really good a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time. The movie is still an hour and a half, somewhere in there. It flies by. I was kind of surprised it's not a 2-hour long film. Neither is the next movie, the prequel, the beginning. Now that one, it's like an hour and 30 minutes too. I miss movies being this length, because at least if they're bad or generic, they fly by. They're not like Evil Dead Rise, where you're sitting around for 2 damn hours with barely anything interesting happening or things you've seen a billion times happening. It's a good thing, you know? But it's not the greatest movie ever, in my personal opinion. Let's talk about the writing. The writing's pretty strong, I think, for the most part. Not that we have the most defined characters ever. You don't really know anything about them, and as I said, I don't really remember any of their names. But this film has a lot of good stuff. The family that Leatherface has, I think, are the best one we've ever had. A lot of people like the original family, Chop Top and the brother that we all thought was a dad in the original 74 movie. They're not in here, but I kind of like this family more than any family I've ever seen in these movies. From what my recollection... Shit, let me try that again. From what my recollection is, that's what I remember liking the most, was this particular film and the setup with the family stuff. Because you don't know who doesn't live in that house that could be involved with this family. That stuff is really cool to me. Now, the CGI practical effects. There are some bits of CGI, not really with blood. Some of that is well, we did this to this guy over here. You have to, green screen his leg off, or his face, or whatever, That stuff doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad at all. But when we talk about the practical effects, which are mainly what you get with this movie, which is a great thing about it, it really benefits the film. If you're seeing dead bodies in the basement, or you're seeing fingers in a box, or you're seeing whatever in this cannibal-focused film, those kills look fantastic. There are certain moments that make me cringe every time I watch this movie. It's horrific. It really is, and I love that about it. Let's talk about the final thing here, and that would be the music. Not really a soundtrack, but a score. It feels like a soundtrack from a modern-day Sci-Fi Channel movie. It is so cheap. If you've heard it, if you've watched this movie in recent years, I think you'll understand probably where I'm coming from this. This is a very summertime film. Having the film open up with, Sweet Home Alabama, for example, is probably very fitting for it being kind of a summertime film. By the way, I'm sorry I started these reviews in spring without waiting till the summertime. But I wanted to go ahead and delve into them because I have a lot of things I want to talk about this summer. But we'll see what happens. But the score for the film feels like something you would see on the CW TV shows. It's very cheap, and I never noticed that about this film because it's been so long since I watched it. I've grown a lot in my love for movies over the years. I've learned a lot about filmmaking over the years that really kind of ruined certain things for me in film. And I kind of wish I didn't know most of those things anymore. I wish I could just turn a film on and enjoy it, This movie, the score kind of ruins it. If I'm being honest with you, I think it's really cheap, and again, it just falls flat a lot of the time. It kills the tension sometimes, too. Now, there are certain scenes, like one in particular about two guys, or two people, running away from Leatherface out in I guess in the backyard of the house, with some sheets hanging up on the laundry lines, or the clothing lines, whatever. And he's chasing them through there. And there's no music, no sound, nothing. And it is great. It's great. It really shows the direction that Marcus Nispel can really pull off. He's a great director. I really like the guy. And then, when we have scenes like that get ruined with other scenes that have the cheap, bland music in it, the royalty-free type shit, it just kind of ruins it, just a little bit, just a tad bit for me. But overall, the remake, the 2003 remake of this movie, or the series, whatever, is not bad at all. It has some really good stuff in it, some solid performances from pretty much everyone. Leatherface ain't the greatest, but he's better than he has been for a very long time. Very long time. Even though I liked him in part 3, he's much better here, I would say. It's just not my favorite thing ever. if I'm being honest with you. It just hasn't aged well for me. I don't really understand why, because I thought for sure this would be my favorite, because it always was when I was growing up. And being the first one I ever saw, that nostalgia and the memories I have of seeing that on TV and whatever, it's good times. I remember that. I remember buying this set. It's cool. It's really cool, and I love that about it. But it's not for me anymore. It just hasn't aged for me well, which makes me worry about watching the Friday the 13th remake again, because it's been a while. You know, every once in a while I'll watch it. Maybe every other year I'll watch it, but it still kind of hasn't aged perfectly for me. I didn't make around to finishing it last year, or even getting to it last year. I watched like 7 of those movies last year and just never got around to it. So anyway, the remake, if I had to rate the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5, but it's kind of like a almost to a 4 for me. It's just, it doesn't make it there. It's kind of a generic film, has its flaws for sure, but it surely could not be worse than the next film that I enjoyed, the prequel. We'll see what happens with that. That's probably going to end up really bad, because I remember the ending of that film being really bad too. Anyway, what did you think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 remake? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below, guys, because it can't just be me that thinks this aged poorly. And not being a big Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan in general, again, this is probably like the next best after the original out of the previous films I've been reviewing, but that's not saying a lot. It's not saying a whole lot, because of this film being kind of generic for the most part. But again, the gore, if you're about the gore, it's pretty solid gore in here. I actually prefer the blood and stuff in this film compared to something like Evil Dead Rise, which I thought was super generic with all the CGI gore in it. This was really cool, though. I enjoyed this a lot. For what it is, for what it manages to do, it's alright. Anyway, have you seen it? What do you think? Put your thoughts and comments down below again. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.